architecture, in healthcare, but there's some things that we don't want to be recognized as leaders in. And one of those things that I have seen directly as a judge for 22 years has been the dramatic growth in violent crime and in gang activity in this county, in this city, which we all love. The latest crime report from the governor's office, the Crime Commission report in 2010, recognizes Charlotte as the leader in the state in gangs. In fact, we have 160 recognized gangs in Charlotte alone. And in the state, there are approximately 14,000 identified gang members. Wake County is second to Charlotte in the rankings with 97 gangs. As I tell almost anyone who listens, this is a continually rising and dramatic problem that we must deal with in this area. Leadership can be like any other ability or any other talent, can be applied for positive purposes or for negative purposes, for noble causes or ignoble causes. Our speaker today, Andrew Norman, is a gentleman who was recognized early on for leadership skills, but he had come from a tumultuous background, and he applied those leadership skills in a way which we would not consider to be the right way. He became the leader of one of the most feared gangs in the Massachusetts area. He served 14 years in prison. He had been sentenced for an 18 to 25 year sentence for a number of crimes, including armed robbery. When he left prison in 1999, he began, and I suppose the journey began earlier when he was in prison, but he began turning his life around and applying his leadership skills in a positive way. And he's dedicated his career and his life since that time to fighting gang activity. He founded and is president of the National Gang Council. He has established a program called Project Footprints, which I'm sure he'll tell you about, and has become a national and international speaker, speaking at places such as Harvard, Harvard Law School, Harvard Divinity School, the John F. Kennedy School of Government, and to various corporate groups all across the world, telling people about how they can rise up and apply their skills and their life to overcome the obstacles that are before them. I'm hoping today that this will be the beginning of our focus with this club that exercises so much leadership on the problem of crime and gang activity in Mecklenburg County, and that we can turn this around and in the next few years become leaders in the state and in the nation in fighting gangs. And I think Andrew Norman is going to help us start that path.
Only because usually I would never correct a judge, and I would just say, yes, sir. But since I'm not on trial, my first name is Andre. But I'd have taken that in court. I'm like, no problem. And came with probation, call me Johnny. I'm out of here. I'm officially starting my 20 minutes because I know this is a timely meeting. And I do intend to respect your time, and I appreciate your attendance. I want to thank you for the invitation. I want to thank you for just welcoming me. And I still find it amazing that people want to hear from me. I wake up and it's like, are you serious? I'm going downtown to a meeting of distinguished people from North Carolina and Charlotte and throughout the city and the country to hear from Andre. I have a problem with my worthiness and just self-esteem at times. I wonder, do I belong? Will they receive me? Will they laugh at me? Will they just patronize me and walk away? But I show up because I advocate for young people. And my fears notwithstanding, my shortcomings notwithstanding, I stand here on behalf of the young people of your city and your state. And so whatever fears I have, I just have to deal with, because they need help and they need information to be shared with you. And it's my job today to share some of that information with you. I'm going to do three things. I'm going to briefly tell you about my upbringing. I'm going to talk about the work that I do. I want to talk about the work that we can do, because it's a collaborative effort across the table. It's not one side against the other. I was born in Boston City Hospital. There's a good friend of mine back here who might have delivered me, come to find out. He was delivering babies in 1967, and he might have got my brother, but he was gone by the time I got there. But my mom married a high school sweetheart. She had 2 kids. Her husband robbed banks. He went to prison for robbing banks. She meets my dad, a local drug dealer. She has 4 more kids. And 6 kids, mom, dad, everything was wonderful. But short story, my father had a habit of beating my mother. Routinely, I would come home to my mother with black eyes, banished and punishment on the porch because she couldn't come in because he was upset. And that was just how life went. One day I come home and it's peace and happiness. The next time you come home, it's just pandemonium and chaos. And that was just a daily occurrence. And as a 5-year-old, I didn't know that other homes weren't like this. So you just live your life. On the way home from school one day, on the bus with my brothers and sisters, one day, rocks came crashing through our bus windows. And behind the rocks came some words: nigger, spear chucker, and a few others. And I'm on the bus, laying on the floor, first grader, crying, not sure what to do or what's happening. When I get home, I go to my dad. I say, hey, Dad, who are these white kids? Why are they throwing rocks at me? And what are these names? I've never heard them before. He looked at me. He thought about it. My father's a big guy, so I'm like waiting, like, okay, Dad. And he just walked away. Unbeknownst to me, my father grew up in Petersburg, Virginia, in an earlier time. And kids lined up on the side of the road and threw rocks at him and his brothers and sisters. And when he got home to my grandfather, he said, Dad, who are these kids? What are the names? My grandfather looked at him and said, son, that's just the way it is, run faster. So they eventually moved to the great north, and they thought they had escaped it. But lo and behold, it came full circle. One day I came home from school, and my brother told me, Dad's gone. What do you mean, Dad's gone? My father was gone. He moved out. My mother was tired of the beatings. And that's just the way it was. I took 3 lessons early in life. 1, it's okay to hit people. 2, I better protect myself because nobody's coming to protect me. And 3, with my dad leaving, I don't have to explain myself to anybody because nobody explained themselves to me. I took these lessons. Now you have a single mom, 6 kids in the inner city. It gets kind of CNN-ish. And you've seen CNN stories before. Single mom, 6 kids. I don't need to explain it to you. We're poor, heat goes off, lights go off. No mentors, I'm second youngest. I gravitate to the streets, I join gangs, I don't go to school, I drop out, I become a full-time gang member. I'm sentenced to 15 to 20 years for armed carjacking, 15 to 20 years for armed home invasion. I get to the prison. When I get there, it's a reunion of all my friends from special ed. That's what it was. We're all the special ed kids. When I was in school and you couldn't read, they had a thing called a dummy class. They put all us in one room and closed the door. Well, they reopened that door at the state penitentiary and let us all play again. And when I got in, I wanted to be the top guy in the prison system. So I went about learning the lessons of how do you conduct yourself in prison, and that's through violence. So I began stabbing people and beating people on a daily basis. I've been convicted twice of attempted murder in state prison. I've been sentenced to additional 10 years while in state prison for crimes committed therein. I've been banished to isolation. I've had riots on airplanes. I've been kicked out of 10 different state prisons. I've been kicked out of Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. I've been kicked out of Oklahoma. I've been kicked out of Tennessee. I've been kicked out of many states for encouraging and organizing gangs and committing violent acts. And while in segregation for my last few attempted murders, I had a chance to go stab a few more people because I was the #3 gang member at this point, and my goal was to be 1. And an opportunity to stab 7 gentlemen, which would have catapulted me to #1. But before I could do it, I had an intervention. God spoke to me. He said, Andre, don't do this. Life choice. And when God spoke to me, I got mad. I said, all of my life, there's been no God. When my mother was being beaten, there was no God. When I was hungry at home, there was no God. When they was throwing rocks at me on the bus and calling me names, there was no God. For all the Saturdays I sat at home on the porch waiting for my dad to come get me and he never showed, there was no God. So why today do you want to be God? Last I checked, I haven't lost a fight since the 7th grade. And I'm not going to lose this one. I'm on course to be the #1 prisoner, #1 gang member in the state. Why are you bothering me? Why don't you go to the church? There's a church building with people on their knees praying to you, saying, God, come to my life. I want to see you. I don't want to see you. I wanted to see you a long time ago. You got bad timing. He stayed focused and he said, with the same message, don't do this. In the end, I walked back to my cell and I didn't do it. And I'll say to you, I argue with God. That's not a big deal. But if anybody ever tells you they argue with God and they won, run, because they're on heavy medication. And as I sat in my cell, I said, okay, if I can't be this gang member, gangland guy anymore, warrior, who am I going to be? And I thought to myself, I want to be successful. I want to be free and I want to be successful. And I recognized that successful people went to university. If I took a poll, I'm more than positive most people in this room went to a university someplace. So I was right, again. And I said, I'm going to go to Harvard University and be successful. I picked Harvard not because it was the #1 school on the planet, but when I was a little boy, I actually rode my skateboard in Harvard Square. It's the only school I ever heard of. So when I came out my cell the next day, I told all my gang member friends, I'm going home and I'm going to Harvard. They wanted to laugh at me, but I had a habit of stabbing people. So they kind of went with it. It's like, if that's what you want to do, buddy, go ahead. The fact that you're doing 25 years, you're a gang member, you can't read, we're not even going to talk about that. So I had a plan. I designed a plan. I went back to school. I got my GED. I started going to counseling. I had a slight anger management problem. And I just started forging forward. And God blessed me with my first mentor. It was an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. Because nobody else would come near me because I was so dangerous. And he sat with me. We met by chance, and we met every Wednesday during Jewish services, of which I'm not Jewish and he wasn't black, but that's okay. He was a willing teacher, I was a willing student, and he taught me some basic things. Forgiveness, mentorship, humility. Because these are the things I needed to learn. And he was the one that taught them to me. And I took those lessons. And on November 15th, when I walked out of prison in 1999, I went from the prison to the parole office, from the parole office to a youth center. 90 minutes after my release, I was doing a group with some young men on their way to detention. And I explained to them, you're not going to prison because you're a gang member. You're not going to prison because you own a gun. You're not going to prison because you don't know how to read. You're going to prison because you can't manage your emotions. The traumas that beset you, whether it's through your parents or through your neighborhood or through poverty, you don't know how to manage. So you act out and you take it into society, and then you meet the police officers whose job is to manage you because you don't know how to manage yourself. It's rage built up. And rage doesn't have to turn to violence if managed correctly. If unmanaged, it'll turn into violence and turn into street crimes and it'll turn into hurt people. And that's what I explained to them. And I did my last group 4 days ago. I was in Abaco, Bahamas, with a Rotary group. They had an inter-island festival when they brought all the kids together. And I did a session, 5 sessions for the kids that weekend, this past weekend. And I explained to them similar things. You don't have to go down a bad road. And a bad road doesn't always institute crime and prison. Sometimes you can get a great job, get a family, and just be miserable. And spend your whole years just miserable with a job you hate and a family you can't stand. I said, you need to be loving, happy, and fulfilled. And I sat down with them and I explained to them how to get to that point. I know what it's like not to have. I know what it's like to be deprived. I also know what it's like to be loved. Now, it wasn't from the people that I wanted. I'd love my dad to love me, but that's just not going to happen. So I settled for it and get it where I can get it from.